Welcome to another episode of The Advocate. Today, we'd like to perform a couple of functions. One, we'd like to introduce the newest Dean of the New Mexico Law School, Dean David Herrig. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, Judge.
And we also want to talk about a couple of programs that are administered at the law school through the clinical law program. And so, Dean Herrig, thank you. I understand you're originally from Michigan and kind of served a little bit of time at the University of Pittsburgh Law School.
That's right. I was at Pittsburgh for 23 years, so more than just a little bit of time.
Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, I went to law school at the University of Michigan, practiced for a while, and then got into teaching, and came to the University of Pittsburgh in 1990 to build the clinical law programs, which is what we're going to talk about today.
And what's your experience been like in New Mexico so far?
It's been great. I love the weather, and I love the law school. The law school is really dynamic, and that's the reason I came here. It's a special place.
Well, we welcome you. We know that you haven't been at the law school for very long. Law school deans are responsible for a great deal of functions. I mean, they have a lot of assigned responsibilities. Not only do they have to administer the law school, but the legislature has then placed additional requirements on you. How are you handling all of those types of things?
Well, easing into it after just over 4 months, but you're right, and it's a different place here in New Mexico because it's the only law school in the state, and therefore you do get called on to do things that are different than other law schools. I was dean at Pitt, and some of the things I'm doing here I never would have done there.
Yeah, one of the things that you have to do, I guess, is form a commission that selects judges to sit on the bench and make recommendations to the governor.
That's correct. Every time there's a judicial vacancy, we form a committee and try to send up candidates to the governor, yes.
Well, we wish you well. The other thing that we wanted to talk about today was the clinical law program at UNM. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a very special program. It's a big reason that I'm here at the law school. And let me just start by defining kind of clinical legal education just a little bit. This is a program at the law school, and it's law schools nationally that have clinics. But they bring in upper-level law students. Students have at least completed 3 semesters of their legal education, and they step fully into the lawyer role. They are a lawyer for actual clients. So they're getting all the skills that a lawyer would need. They're developing those skills. They have to interview clients, counsel them fully, represent them in court or at negotiations. They are the attorney of record for the client. That's clinical legal education model, is putting the student in that role, the shoes of a lawyer. And at this law school has been a leader in this area for decades. I remember when I first came into clinical teaching in the late 1980s, and one of the first things I picked up was a New Mexico Law Review symposium issue on clinical legal education. And I've been watching this law school ever since with their clinic program. And let me just mention a few things that make it special. First of all, it's required. Students in our law school have to complete a clinic component, and that is distinct, rather unusual. There are only a handful of law schools in the country that have that type of requirement. Also, our faculty is fully involved in the clinic. There's no difference in status if you're clinic or traditional, and the full faculty is involved in the clinic program here, and that is special.
And we have a couple of faculty members here today.
We do.
Joining us, we have Professor Natalie Martin and Professor Yael Cannon, or can I just say Yael?
Yael, yes.
Yael, okay.
Yeah, there you
Cannon, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
And tell us a little bit about your involvement at the law school, Ms. Martin.
Sure. So I am one of the supervisors in the part of the clinic that we call the Business and Tax Clinic. So this is one section of 5 that we basically run at any given time, and all of the clinics are year-round. So the kinds of services that we provide in my group is, well, they range from small business services to services for nonprofit organizations, tax planning for various businesses, and then we also do tax controversy work for low-income taxpayers who are in a controversy with the IRS. And so there are quite a few of us. As David said, I teach on the doctrinal side as well, and so do many, if not all, of the other supervisors. We have offices in the South Valley Small Business Development Center in the Hispano Chamber, which we really relish, the fact that we can get into communities and meet people who need our services. And so that's down on 4th Street. And we meet there a few hours a week with clients that they set up for us. And we also have relationships with the South Valley Economic Development Center and Acción New Mexico and some of the other micro lenders around town.
So if there's someone out there that is starting to form a small business or owns a small business, if they need some legal help, they might be able to contact the clinical law program at the law school?
Fabulous, yes. So there's a couple of ways of doing that. One is to call the South Valley Small Business Development Center and get a meeting there with us. And that's sort of nice because they provide business planning services as well. So then they get the package deal, the legal plus the business side. But they can also call 277-5265. And as I said, we are in operation year-round. Right now would probably not be a great time to call because we're in transition. But perhaps at the middle of January, if people want to try. And
After the holidays?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then, Professor Cannon, you run or help run a different component of the clinical law program. Tell us about that component.
Yes, thank you, Judge. So a number of us faculty members are involved in our Medical Legal Alliance Clinic, which is a really incredible sort of cutting-edge interdisciplinary model that has doctors and other healthcare professionals working together with our law students and our law faculty to advocate on behalf of low-income people in New Mexico. And so really what that means is that doctors who are out there working through the UNM hospital system at different clinics out in the community who have been working with patients who are low income are seeing all kinds of legal issues standing in the way of their patients getting healthy and stable. And that's their goal, is to really achieve that health and stability. And so they realized back in 1996, a really visionary pediatrician, Dr. Andy Shee here in Albuquerque, and one of our faculty members, Mike Norwood, realized, hey, if doctors and lawyers who are both serving low-income people team up and do it together, we can really get those kids, we can really get those families healthy and stable. So we have a particular partnership with two clinics in the International District here in Albuquerque, the Young Children's Health Center and the Southeast Heights Family Medicine Clinic, which are both part of the UNM hospital system. And the doctors, the nurses, the social workers, the other healthcare professionals there have been trained by us to spot legal issues facing their patient families and to refer those issues to us for intake. And so our law students are out pretty much every Friday out in the International District at these health clinics. And so when you go into one of those health clinics to see the doctor, you can also see the lawyer for help.
Well, and it sounds like with that particular project that you would be, or the law students would be involved in a variety of legal issues. I mean, it sounds like housing, landlord-tenant type of issues, perhaps.
Yep. And then there's a whole other list. So, people who come to us for help through that program can get all kinds of help. So, for example, we do a lot of family law issues. So we help people who want to get divorced, who are in custody disputes. We help a lot of people who are victims of domestic violence and children who've suffered in those ways and families who need help. We help people with disabilities, including children and adults in education proceedings and in proceedings for adults with disabilities who need help with their decision making. We do immigration advocacy. We help people get public benefits. So there's a whole long list of great services that our law students provide to those patients.
Does someone have to have a medical problem in order to get that type of help? I mean, I don't know how other people might have access to that. It's nice that there's an alliance between the medical profession and the legal profession. But if there's somebody else out there that might be interested or have those types of issues, who might they contact?
Well, they can always give our office a call at the same number that Professor Martin provided, which is 277-5265. And if it's not an issue that we can help with for whatever reason, we will help people who call get referred to other legal services.
And there's a variety of other legal services available in New Mexico. There's a hotline. There's also 14 or 15 civil legal service providers available to help in a variety of areas. We've had other programs to discuss those particular providers, so we're not going to go over that right now. But Dean, tell us some of the other components of the clinical law program.
Well, we have also an Indian Law Clinic, Southwest Indian Law Clinic, which serves certainly the Native American population and serves around Indian law issues generally for clients who aren't Native, but they have those issues. So that's also a comprehensive service clinic. And they're out doing now even more outreach in the communities and community organizing work. So that clinic is evolving and becoming even more comprehensive. So that's a major clinic program at the law school. And these two components, Elle's clinic is actually part of another clinic that's even more comprehensive, and she could probably explain that clinic even better than I could. So I don't know if you want to expand on that.
Yeah, so the course that our students enroll in is known as the Community Lawyering Clinic. And really, it is what it sounds like. Our students aren't sitting, in the ivory tower just studying law. They're out in the community, serving the community, and this type of clinical model is really a win-win for both the law school and the community, because the law students are really learning hands-on how to be lawyers under really close supervision and support from faculty members, and then the community is getting served. And so the Medical Legal Alliance is a big part of what we do in the Community Lawyering Clinic, but we have other partnerships. One of our other big partnerships is with the Juvenile Public Defender here in Bernalillo County, and so we get some of the cases that the Juvenile Public Defender gets referred for kids who have been arrested and are facing charges in the children's court, and so we do advocacy there as well, and sometimes with other community partners.
And that would be different than the public defender's office or some sort of other criminal defense attorneys that are available for juveniles that might find themselves in the criminal justice system. So you have lawyers then will provide additional types of assistance?
Well,
or
so
not lawyers, but law students that
law
will provide it.
students, yeah. So we are doing the traditional public defender role that that I'm sure your audience has heard a lot about because of your work, but our approach to it is really holistic in nature. So when families come to us, we actually represent those children as their public defender in those cases. And when we spot in talking to them other legal issues, for example, lots of kids who are involved in that system also have unmet educational needs, or there might be issues going on with that family, then we might broach the possibility with the family of seeing how we can help advocate for them in other ways besides just in their delinquency case in children's court, or to get them connected with the types of services.
So you're trying to
that
help
they
fix
need.
more than one problem, not just the legal problem.
Yeah, and our hope really with our community lawyering clinic and the medical legal partnership as part of that is to be holistic and to really think about how we can address problems early, be collaborative in our work, and try to make sure that we can keep families from getting to a state of crisis if we can get to them early. For a lot of families, who are low income, their interaction with the doctors that they work with is really rich, and that the doctors are people that they trust and they can open up to, and so people can get connected through that part of their lives to legal services in a way that they may not have access to legal services normally, or know that there's a legal issue that they're struggling with. And the other sort of win that I guess is worth pointing out is that we're training lawyers and doctors and other healthcare professionals in this state, ideally to stay here in New Mexico and to serve low-income people. And so I think there's a lot of goals of our community learning clinic and of the partnerships we have within it.
Okay, so there's some advantages both to the community and to the law students themselves. And how is it that the law students are even allowed to practice law, Ms. Martin, Professor Martin?
Sure. So we have a special rule in New Mexico that allows students that are enrolled in the clinic to appear in court. They have to be supervised by a full-time law professor. So I think in all of the roles we've been talking about, our goal is to have the student there front and center, providing the services, really developing that attorney-client relationship with the client, but we're always there to support the student, to support the client. And the client's really getting, I think, very good services because they're getting a full-time faculty member as well as the student attorney. But the rule is the thing that allows the students to appear.
And so the law students actually then become the attorney for the client, and they represent people not only in giving them legal advice, but also if it's necessary to have to go to court, the law student will also be in court with them.
That's absolutely right. I mean, and if we've done our work well as faculty supervisors, I always thought I sit in court and I say nothing and I observe, and these students are the lawyers, and they handle the case and deal with the clients.
And I attended the University of New Mexico Law School, and I was part of the clinical law program, and I thought it was both wonderful for the experience that I got while I helped other people. It was, I think, good for the members of the community because generally there's no fee associated with the representation, and so they can go in and get some good legal advice and good legal counsel without having to pay anything at all. There might be a small, I think, initiation fee or initial meeting fee. Is there something like that?
Yeah, there's an interview fee. I think it's $10, right? If you get interviewed in our offices. If you go to one of these intake sites, you don't get charged that at all. And then if we take your case in the business clinic, it's $50. We feel that it is somewhat important for people to have some money involved in the case. But I think for ours, the main thing is to actually help people so that they can make money, put food on the table. And it's very much of a poverty sort of program as well, in the sense that we're serving people that will not be served by downtown attorneys because they don't have those resources. So there's a small fee up front, but hopefully it's made up for in spades when people go to our group and try to get the services of the business clinic.
And I know you said, Dean, that every student's required to take a clinical law component.
Right.
How many students is that on a semester-wide basis?
Oh, each semester it's probably anywhere from 40 to 50 students a semester. We have classes of about 120 students, 110 to 120. So you divide it by 3 because you've got the fall, the spring, and then the summer component. It is year-round. So I've been told that we're the largest legal services provider in New Mexico because of the number of attorneys that we have working with us.
And how does the law school handle the situation where someone needs legal help, but it takes longer than a semester to try to resolve that problem? How does that issue dealt with?
Yeah, so that's a challenge. And what we do is that we prepare our clients for that situation. We do have our students here with us for fall, spring, and summer. And so when a student wraps up at the end of the fall, there's going to be a new student coming in. Like Professor Martin was describing, we'll pick back up in January after the holidays, and a new student will take over any cases that weren't completed in the fall. And so it is important for people to understand that that's what happens in our representation. But the great news for our clients, I think, is that our law students have a very low caseload compared to many attorneys out in the community. And like Professor Martin was saying, oftentimes there aren't other attorneys to take these types of cases, but our clients really get the highest quality of lawyering, and I think the highest level of attention they could possibly get from lawyers, because our law students, not only do we keep caseloads lower for them than would be at a traditional legal services organization, but they are passionate, they are excited, they are enthusiastic, and so we tend to get nothing but great feedback from our clients, despite sort of the turnover that, if their case is going to go on for longer, they might have to work with more than one law
And that is the key edge that our student lawyers provide, is that they can, frankly, they can beat a case to death because they are passionate about it, but they have the lower caseload. And so that's their edge in this representation. Yes, they're inexperienced, they're learning, they're gaining these skills, but they can really pour themselves into it. And that's part of the education process too, because my clinic was a child welfare law clinic. And oftentimes you'd see the law students go into the role basically of caseworker or social worker, and they'd cross that line a bit because they have the time and they're so into it. And you bring them back and say, no, this is what a legal professional does. And you start defining the role of a legal professional for them. And so that's part of the clinical education.
Well, and you're right, and it's so important from a lawyer standpoint, from a law student standpoint, to get some of that practical experience. And especially, I think, at that level, because you do get lost, at least the first couple of years in law school, with black letter law and what it means and why it means certain things. And you kind of lose sight of the fact that that black letter law has to be applied to real life situations.
This is what brings the law to life for the students, because they have been doing a lot of book learning. And I always like to use the ethics area as an illustration of what you're saying, Judge, because ethics really, when you learn the professional code of responsibility, it really doesn't come to life for you until the rubber hits the road and you get a client. Like in my clinic, it would be usually a teenager who wants to do something that's really wrong-headed, you think is unwise. And who's the client here? Who directs the matter? And you have to go back to the ethics rules, and now they mean something. And so that's what clinical education does. It puts meat on the bones of just basic doctrine. It brings it to life.
That's so true. Professor Martin, tell us kind of a classic example of somebody that might need the small business component at the clinical law program.
Sure, and we've served a lot of different industries, but a couple of years ago we had somebody who was starting a gym, and it had a rock climbing wall in it, had some fabulous issues for the students to work on in terms of the leasing and that sort of thing. We have worked on quite a few restaurants, a couple that are in business on Central Avenue and doing very well. We also have provided a lot of services to people who are in sort of the media arts industry, and the students love this kind of thing. You know, we helped someone start a magazine. There was an online website for independent music artists, really fun and interesting. And then we've done a lot of collaboration with the Southwest Indian Law Clinic when they have artists who want to, you know, bring their work to market, and thinking about those types of issues.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. I mean, and I don't think you get any more real life than trying to help someone run their own business.
Just to tag on to what the dean was saying, you know, the students, they go through this 2-year or 2.5-year process of sort of learning how to think like a lawyer. But I think that human element is something that really, really changes them. I mean, when they first meet a client, they finally realize, wow, I mean, we really are in a service industry. And that's why I can't imagine these law schools that don't require this, because I think we very regularly see, you know, real transformation, you know, student to lawyer right before our eyes, and it's wonderful.
And in that component, is it necessary for the law students to get into court as often?
No, we generally, I mean, we do have some matters that require court appearances. We've been doing some foreclosure defense work and some other, some bankruptcy work as well. But in our clinic, that's not really the focus. I mean, we do a lot of work with community groups. We have represented some very exciting nonprofits. And so I would say that the skills that are built are similar in terms of, you know, client relationships, interviewing, and so on. But it's not a court-based practice at all. It's much more transactional, building businesses, building community groups, and so on.
And then my guess, Professor Cannon, is that because of the type of work that the component that you focus on deals with, that you actually have more of an opportunity, or the students have more of an opportunity to get into court, just because there's such a variety. I mean, you're talking about domestic violence issues, some criminal justice issues, juvenile justice. There's also housing types of issues. Almost all of those require some sort of court involvement.
Yes, yes. Our students spend a lot of time in different courts, not only here, but in other nearby counties, and it's a wonderful experience for them. They actually get to, you know, stand up in court and begin their role as advocates while they're still in law school, and they really tend to do a fabulous job, and they work very closely with their clients, preparing them for court, getting them ready for that. And our experience, I hope, is, and it appears, is that the judges have been very excited to have us in the courtroom and to see the high quality lawyering that we're doing on behalf of people many times who otherwise would be in there without no lawyer, or with no lawyer next to them, or might not even be able to navigate the system far enough along to even get their day in court.
And that's so important. I mean, access to justice.
Yes.
The Supreme Court has a commission designed, and its sole purpose is to try to figure out ways to give all New Mexicans the opportunity to get in court in the event that they need to be there and have that equal access. so that it doesn't matter where you come from or how much money you have, what educational level you happen to have, that you still have access to the courts in some form or fashion. And so this service provided by the law school obviously helps to meet some of those goals.
Yeah, and Judge, it also reveals this kind of the critique of law schools that we're turning out too many lawyers. Is really we're turning out too many lawyers for the people who can't afford a lawyer. You know, or we're turning out too many lawyers for the people who actually can't afford legal services.
Mm-hmm.
We're not turning out enough to conserve the middle class and those in poverty. There's a crying need out there, and we see it in the clinics all the time. You see it in any poverty law practice. So the idea is that we've got to make this economically feasible for students who graduate and are now practicing attorneys to serve these population groups.
Well, and you see it in court all the time. I mean, obviously I'm in Metropolitan Court. It's a small claims court, and so all the claims are worth less than $10,000 in the civil arena, and most of the claims, most of the people involved are low-income New Mexicans, and you know that money, even though it might be relatively small in some instances, is still a lot for someone that doesn't have anything.
That's right.
And so you see those battles all the time. I miss lawyers, quite frankly, because we don't get often lawyers in our courtroom. In fact, about 10 to 15% of the time we see lawyers in our cases. And so I miss lawyers because I see the value. I can see when they come into court how organized and prepared they are.
It
But
makes
I
a
also-
real difference. I'll just interject real quickly, but that is part of the reason why we have the low-income taxpayer clinic, and there are clinics across the country that are actually ironically funded by the IRS to fight the IRS in a sense. But the rationale for it, or part of it, is that the IRS feels if people are represented, these matters are more efficiently resolved and better resolved. So just the same points you're making. But they're providing hard dollars.
Well, and then
that
also
speaks.
having someone to talk to, okay, and someone with a little bit of experience that understands the legal issues involved and how to present the factual issues that need to be presented. Having someone to be able to talk to about that oftentimes will end up in a resolution before you even get to court. And so lawyers are very valuable in terms of what they can do even before people get to court. Certainly they're valuable in court, but the efforts that they make to try to get the case resolved prior to court is helpful.
Yeah, they truly lower the transaction costs of justice.
And so tell us again, what telephone number, if there's anybody interested out there, small business person or someone that needs some other types of legal help, what telephone number should they
Sure,
call?
so people should call 277-5265, and they will be asked by the receptionist what type of legal issue that they have. And they may even be invited to come in and fill out some paperwork with a staff person beforehand. So that's 277-5265.
Okay, and then you mentioned there's a couple of locations in Albuquerque that people can visit. Can you give us those locations?
Sure, so, but I also want to just say that we also do court work with taxpayers. So you had mentioned that. Yeah. So we do go to tax court with people. But for the business cases, they can also call the South Valley Small Business Development Center in the Hispano Chamber of Commerce. And so I don't have their number off the top of my head, but...
well, I'm sure if they contact the Hispano Chamber of Commerce, that they'll be
Yes.
directed to the right location.
Absolutely.
And then tell us again about the Medical Legal Alliance, where they might be able to contact.
So you can also call the same number that Professor Martin mentioned, 277-5265. But if you or someone in your family is a patient at any of the University of New Mexico community clinics, hospital sites, and there's many, many throughout the city in different places, including the two specific ones I mentioned where we spend a lot of time on site, even in other places in the state, to go and talk to your doctor or a social worker or a nurse and tell them that you're looking for legal help from the University of New Mexico School of Law, and they can connect you with us too.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for being with us today. I appreciate it. I'm hoping that this information gets out to people that need the help. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you. Welcome, Dean, to
Thank
New
you,
Mexico,
Judge.
and we appreciate that you're here and look forward to your ongoing service. I'm sure that we're going to see you in a variety of arenas,
That's
not only at the
probably
clinical
true.
law program, but the selection of judges. You all even get involved with driver's licenses, and I mean, there's a whole host of things.
These are things I have yet to learn about, but it is great to be here.
There's a
Yeah.
whole host of other things that we've had the former dean, Dean Washburn, on, and
Yes.
he had talked about the various functions that the dean is responsible for. And so it was just, it's remarkable the amount of work you have to do.
It's a long list.
Well, we
yes.
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
We hope you found the show interesting and helpful. And as always, know your rights, know your responsibilities, and God bless. Thank you for watching.